Are you still playing in a band, by the way? Are you still singing?
No, I wish
No?
I was, but I lost those chops a long time ago.
They might come back.
I would love it if they came back.
Yeah, I did the same thing. We have a little bit of a similar, but I was part of that grunge scene that came in
Mm,
right after the hair bands. And
yeah.
we got our guys together about 5 years ago. And then we tried to do it during COVID. Actually, we tried to do it through Zoom. And it did not work very well, but it was so great to see everybody again.
We've done well, it's been probably 5 or 6 years, but I did 8 songs with my guitar player who has a band, and I was able to do I'm a dead ringer for Bon Scott, so I could do all of the
Oh
AC/DC.
man.
And then I could still do any of the David Lee Roth, Van Halen stuff. So I was able to do 8 songs, and then after that I was wasted. Like, it was too much for me. When I was a kid, I would do 4 sets a night, and do 10 songs a set and not have any problem. But 8 was
Wow.
unbelievably hard at that time.
It's amazing. Like it's a muscle like any other muscle, isn't
Oh
it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you got to keep working it. I was a drummer singing backup. And so being out of breath at times and then singing and then the syncopation of being offbeat and stuff like that. But boy, what a joy the whole thing was.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I started playing when I was 15, and I played till I was 26.
Yeah, I was in about the same boat. Those are similar years for me too. Okay, so should we jump in, Anthony? Is that
Absolutely.
okay? Okay, just give
Absolutely.
a second here. Okay. Team, we've just got a wonderful podcast for you here today because we literally have one of the top sales minds in the world joining us. Anthony Iannarino is an author, he's a sales leader, salesperson, really highly sought after keynote speaker. His keynotes and workshops, by the way, have been delivered in 8 countries, about 35 different cities. Anthony manages a number of different businesses. What's really interesting about Anthony is he's not just a theorist or a lecturer. He's actually a practitioner. So he's still president, chief sales officer of Solution Staffing, a best-in-class regional staffing firm in Columbus, Ohio. He's got a B2B sales coaching and consulting company, a boutique consulting company. He's got a sales accelerator, this one I love, learning management system for sales leaders and salespeople who actually don't have their own access to professional training or development through their companies. And Anthony's also a faculty member at Capital University, teaching sales and marketing. He runs his own podcast called In the Arena. And I came across Anthony way back in 2016 when I read a book I still love. It's all dog-eared and highlighted. I keep going back to great books, and this is one of them. The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. What a fantastic title, by the way. He then went to The Art of Closing, Winning the 10 Commitments That Drive Sales. So that was 2017. He followed that up in 2018 with Eat Their Lunch, Winning Customers Away from Your Competition. And we're all anticipating the next book coming in, now it's April timeframe of 2022, Elite Sales Strategies, a guide to being one up, creating value and becoming truly consultative. Anthony, first and foremost, thanks for joining today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, what a CV, by the way. So all of this would have changed if that initial career of being in a 90s hair cover band actually came to fruition for you.
We were in LA doing our own material. And then your generation, the grunge people, just ruined everything for us. We were having a party, and then the grunge came out, and it was more of a heavier feel than what we had. And I would have probably still been in LA had it not been for having a brain surgery. And I had a grand mal seizure and ended up back in Columbus, Ohio. And that's what put me back on the path in sales, because I'd learned so much in LA working with a great mentor. And he forced me into outside sales because I would have never done it voluntarily.
Well, I love the story in your books. I think you referenced it a couple of times in your blogs too, where you say scary for all of us, by the way, when we get one of these new sales leaders, right? If we're doing well with a company and a new sales leader comes in, it's like a new coach in sport. And you said that he'd ignored you for a while because you had hair down to your waist. You still
Right.
had the hairband look going.
Yeah. And I would tell you that we had our best relationship when he just left me alone, but he got aggressive and acted on me, and it changed the direction of my life. So that's what happens when you have a good leader.
Well, boy, isn't it so important? And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things happening in professional sales today, but we all, those of us who've had any degree of success, we all had those amazing coaches that we still remember today, that are still so important to us today. And I'm hoping the next generation that's coming through now, that they're getting that same support, that same coaching, that same leadership. But a lot of the times I think that's missing out there today. I think sales managers are getting pulled in lots of different directions right now, and they're having a pretty tough time. They need some help and support. Boy, Anthony, when I look at your CV and go through all the things you're up to these days, no wonder you're a fan of coffee. It's hard to imagine when you sleep with everything you've got on the go. But
I promise you, I sleep.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. It's good to know you're human. Tell us a little bit about the newest book. Why was there this need for the next book? What prompted Elite Sales Strategies?
I noticed that there's a position that the salesperson needs to be able to occupy. Mm-hmm. And not enough salespeople occupy this space, but the best salespeople do occupy this space. Mm-hmm. And that space is called one up. And what makes one up interesting? I found the concept in an audio recording of Alan Watts, who was a Zen master and a religious guy. And he read out loud Jay Haley's article about a book that he came in contact with that described the relationship between the psychotherapist and their patient. And what he learned is that the person who has a need for psychotherapy wants the psychotherapist to be in the one-up position so they can help them. But then at some point, they start to change their opinion and they decide, like, I don't want them to be one-up anymore. And so they'll say something like, Dr. Mark, you've never helped me. I don't even know why I come here. It's been a total waste of my time. And then, of course, what Freud taught all of the psychotherapists is you don't respond to anything. So you don't say anything. And after a minute or two, that person will go like, oh, Dr. Mark, like, I'm so sorry. You guys, you've been so helpful. I've gained so much from this. And there's this contest that goes on back and forth. And that was what sort of opened my eyes to this idea about one up. Now, the way that I'm using this word is somebody has domain experience, and they have helped a lot of people get a certain result. The other person buys something occasionally. So we have to be one up because we're guiding them and they're not guiding us. So we have to have the one up position. And a lot of this is based on things like information disparity. Like, we know things that they don't know. So I need to get you out of your one down position by giving you information so that you can make the best decision for your company and get the best results possible. And so that positioning means I have to lead. I have to be the one that's doing the teaching. I have to be the one that's helping you make the decision, including facilitating your buyer's journey, because I know better than you what you're capable of. So, and if you want to know where I really learned this myself, I'll tell you the short story of this.
Please.
I went to Lhasa, Tibet in 2010. It's a very interesting experience because you leave Chengdu, China, and you're flying at 15,000 feet and you never descend. You just land at 15,000 feet.
Oh, wow.
And that's it. So you're just like, come onto a runway. You get out of the plane and you immediately know you're not getting enough air. Like the air is way too thin because you're not used to being up that high. I had seen my doctor before I went to Lhasa because I wanted to get altitude sickness medicine so I wouldn't have a miserable trip.
Hmm.
So I did that. And I was taking the altitude medicine. We decided to go to Mount Everest. And we had a Sherpa that took us there. And I'll have to tell you about his house. Uh, there's no door on the front of the house. There's chickens and donkeys in the main floor, and a potbelly stove and a hole in the ceiling that the smoke comes out. And
Oh, wow.
this family has taken yak dung and made it into patties and insulated the outside of their house all the way around. And it was an interesting experience. So we
Kidding.
spent 3 days together driving out to Everest. Now at Everest, we drove up to base camp one.
Hmm.
I had no interest in climbing Mount Everest. And when you see it, you don't really think like, yeah, that would be fun. There's nothing fun looking about it at all. It's hostile. It's just hostile. So I'm walking up this hill, and the Sherpa looks at me and he says, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I'm sick." I said, I'm like tingling in my face and in my hands and
Because you're not getting
my
enough
legs.
air.
I'm not getting enough air. And he said, "Are you taking altitude sickness medicine?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You're allergic to it. Throw it away." Now, Dr. Zimmerman, my doctor, went to Ohio State. He's
Hmm.
got a medical degree. He's a professional doctor. And you think that that's pretty good. You got good advice from somebody who has a medical degree.
Hmm.
But while I'm standing there talking to a guy who didn't go to high school, or didn't go to college, has yak dung under his fingernails, but lives in the Himalayas.
Wow.
So his domain authority was far greater than Zimmerman's. And I realized Zimmerman's never been to the Himalayas. Like, what would he know about this? And what would he know about the
Oh,
allergic reaction some people have? So I threw him away. I threw them away. And he said, "You have to walk faster so that you get more air in. You got to like do this like it's an exercise. Like you got to work." And so I started working and I immediately felt better. Now
hmm.
he was one up. And why is he one up? Because every day he takes people up to Mount Everest and he sees a certain pattern again and again and again. He can see the pattern because he has this experience. That's the same thing that we have. He wasn't trying to one up me, like he wasn't trying to prove that he was
Right.
smarter than me. He's trying to help me, and it did help me. And so that's where I realized like the one up means somebody has some domain authority that's greater than yours. Sorry. And I realized at that time that there are people who know more than you know. And if you want to get out of the one down position, you ask them questions and let them educate you.
Boy, talk about a story that resonates. And I know you're a fan of storytelling, but I don't think anybody who's ever going to hear that story in any keynote or when they read it in book, I'm assuming that's in the book,
Yeah.
that'll resonate forever. And when we start to think about our challenge, I think today in professional sales, I'm not sure enough of us are going at this discipline of professional sales by first focusing on saying, hey, I want to help Anthony out.
Yeah.
I'm not in the business of selling this or selling that. I'm actually in the business of helping Anthony. And boy, it doesn't resonate any more than this. I'm in the business of trying to help Anthony breathe better.
Yeah.
That's the only desired outcome you had that particular day. Nothing else matters if you're not breathing properly.
Yeah.
So as soon as you realized this person had some value to add, you were extremely keyed on because it's compelling. This was compelling. So just out of interest, what a great story. Did you climb Everest, or what
No.
was the goal of the trip? What were you doing? So you just wanted to see it?
Yeah. Yeah. We just went to see it. We were
Hmm.
at 17,200. And the next 12,000 feet doesn't look like a joy. I mean, it looks really, really, it looks very
I believe you.
scary. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I believe you. Oh, what an adventure. And so how do we help, the folks who listen to our podcast, Anthony, the CEOs of medium-sized enterprises, growth businesses, sales leaders, salespeople, with the wrong analogy, I actually believe that state of being seen as, a consultant and someone who can provide value. That is Shangri-La for everybody. But there is a vast majority, I think, of salespeople today. Many do it, but I think we're trying to think through, how do we help and coach our teams to get to that point where the buyer can see them as adding value, that they can understand it's not about Mark and selling the next SaaS offering. It's actually, Mark may have some insight and value to provide in terms of how I can achieve my desired outcomes for the next period of time.
Absolutely.
How
That's absolutely right.
How do we get there? And the elite sales strategy is going to be talking about some strategies and thoughts to get there. How do we coach our teams today to start thinking this way outside of that example, and train and coach them to get to that level?
There's a different type of development that's now necessary. So if you want to take a look at what we're doing in sales generally across the world,
Mm-hmm.
we're using 3 generations of sales approaches. Okay, so the
Okay.
first one I'm going to call legacy. And if you want to look at like Sandler, that program started in 1967, the same year that I was born. So yeah, and I'm 54 years old at the time we're recording this. So that idea, like the idea of don't drop your candy on the lobby floor, which is like, don't do free consulting, is the worst possible advice ever that you could ever take. So a lot of the idea is like, I'm going to have information disparity and I'm not going to share anything with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to share it because I need an advantage in this. And I'm going to try to lock you into things. That's not a helpful way to sell right now.
Right.
The world has changed far too much. Like it's a very, very different world. After that, because that stopped being as effective as it was, because there's more people coming into the market and there's more competition, I don't need to be treated that way. I can go to somebody else. And we developed solution selling.
Right.
And I'm old enough to have practiced both of those generations. Like I've started making cold calls when I was 15. So I know all of these, right? So,
Yeah.
and the solution selling was incredibly powerful for its time. It was incredibly powerful. But a lot of the things that we're doing with salespeople right now is harmful for them. So marketing will say, tell them the story of our CEO, tell them about the company, tell them about the clients that we have, tell them about
All
our
about us.
offerings. Yeah, us at the beginning, the worst first date ever. Like,
Right.
you're just going to talk about you the whole time.
Great analogy.
Yeah, so that is terrible. And then the product people come in behind them and say, this product is so good, it practically sells itself. All you have to do is talk to them about the product and they're going to have high interest. You've never met a customer if you believe that that's true, because they have zero interest
Exactly.
in that kind of a conversation. So what we've done is we've stuck too long to some things that are now not useful for the buyer. What the buyer needs is help understanding the complexity of this world, where we now have a new pandemic, a new variant. We have supply chain issues. I can't get a book because there's no paper. Like there's all these things going on. There's 6.8% inflation in the United States. The Fed's raising rent. So people are like, how do I make a decision in an environment that is this complex and this disruptive, that seems to be accelerating over time? And when you go like, well, we have a good product, that doesn't solve anything for that buyer.
Right.
They need you to help them understand what I would call the certainty sequence. Like, I'm uncertain, so I'll tell you if you don't do something that you're going to have negative consequences. And then now you're going to go like, well, now I'm uncertain again. Right. Now, how do we get positive? And if you can't be the sense maker, the person that actually can explain this thing, and if you're listening to this and you want to see maybe the best book on somebody who's actually written something that's sense making, it's Ray Dalio's new book, Principles for the Changing World Order, which he explains the super cycles that have caused empires to grow and fall. And it's a wonderful piece of work that would explain to you how we make the mistakes that all of the empires before us have made, because it's just a pattern that repeats over and over. But you're now responsible for helping take the complexity and making it something that we can live with so that we can move forward. And that means you're going to have a different type of rep. You need intellectual curiosity. You need to listen to CNBC every morning and pay attention to what's going on in the environment and what kinds of things people are struggling with.
Yeah.
And then figure out how to give them the data to say, because this is true, this is the right thing to do right now. But there's not any enablement right now for that kind of thing. So we don't see a lot of people doing like what we start with an executive briefing. Like, we're going to give you an executive briefing at the beginning, specifically because we want to position ourselves and help you start making sense of the complexity. And that approach should be common right now, but it's still not. And it's because the legacy approaches are what we know and we're comfortable with them. And we think that they still work, but buyers, they don't enjoy this conversation at all. They want the conversation about what I'm going to tell you what my most favorite saying is right now. If you want to reach me, teach me. Like, you got to teach them. And if you're not the one that's teaching them, you are not going to fare well.
Boy, there's so many things to unpack there, Anthony, that are great. For those listening, Ray Dalio, Google something called How the Economy Works. I have a 4-year degree in economics, and he has a 20-minute animated short on how the economy works and the interplay between money supply, interest rates, and productivity. That's clearer than anything I learned in university.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't have to drink as much beer to learn it. So, it was nice to actually see something sober. Going back to that, the value, Anthony, it's so key today. And actually, I think this is the core challenge in sales. I think this is the crux of the challenge in sales today. All of us continue to have to try and break through these walls with buyers because we keep reinforcing with buyers as a sales profession that we care more about ourselves and our commission checks. We have commission breath, and we're not adding value. And I think this gets actually accelerated, truth be told, through venture capital and through the investment that's going into these SaaS companies, because suddenly huge amount of monies go in. They build massive farms of SDRs and AEs. The churn is enormous. Nobody's getting training and coaching. They're talking about pitching products. And anybody who has success just gets bumped into management. Now they're in charge of 8 other SDRs, and they're coaching them on all the wrong things. The first thing a business salesperson should go through is a little bit of training on business acumen. We used to call it in our program a mini MBA.
Right.
And let's just go through, just understand how businesses work, so we actually can put ourselves in the shoes of the buyer when we're reaching out. And I love that idea of the executive briefing. You've leveraged that in a couple of different books, but this I'm saying, hey, I'd like to reach out. And, if nothing else, we're going to talk to you about some trends that are taking place in your industry right now that I think you'll be interested in. And if there's a way we can help you, great. If not, you're going to leave a 30 or 45-minute meeting with some value that you can act on. So I'm going to make sure you get value.
Yeah, that's a risk reversal. So I'm promising that you get the value even if there's no next step. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's the right thing to do. But generally, once you start going through a trend analysis and you start going through that, the person sitting across from you says, what about this? Mm-hmm. And then like, okay, now we're going to have a conversation. And they've not had, I'm going to tell you, most have never had anybody show up and give them that type of experience.
Yeah.
And in elite sales strategies, the third strategy is basically the only thing that you have is a sales conversation. That is all you have. So your company doesn't matter. Your product doesn't matter. Your clients don't matter. None of those things matter. The only thing that matters is, are you creating value for me in the way that I need it inside this conversation?
Yeah. It seems so simple and so basic when you go through it that way, Anthony. But it's not what's being coached and taught today. You look at an onboarding plan for an organization that's taking on new salespeople, and we work with clients who are just onboarding huge numbers of salespeople. The first thing we get into is, the value proposition is about what value and desired outcome, better future do I provide the clients and prospects that we're working with. You and I are the same age. We've known for years. Nobody cares about technology. They don't care about what the technology. It's only what is it going to do for me so I get a better desired outcome.
That's right.
And I think we're the unique. We're at this unique time in history, frankly, because I actually believe our clients and prospects need our help now more than ever before.
There's no doubt about it. That's 100% true.
Yeah, given what's taken place, a lot of what we're seeing in the marketplace is when we break through and we actually start adding value. I think they're desiring a couple of things. First of all, they need help because we've been in this thing long enough now that the expectations are starting to creep up on our buyers. At the beginning of the pandemic, everybody got a bit of breathing space. But now that we're in it and it's going to, however it turns out, now we're back to normal business KPIs and performance, and people are being held accountable. So, to people listening, your clients and prospects need the value that you can provide more than ever before. This is a unique time in history, but you have to be able to articulate what that value is.
Right. And I would tell you, your job is to enable the right decision to get the best possible result for that particular client.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're helping to do. You're not trying to sell them anything. You're trying to help them make a decision.
Right.
And when you start thinking of something like decision enablement or something like that, like all you can do, if your recommendation is buy my solution from me, if that's the only recommendation that you have, you're not going to do well.
Right.
You have to have a lot more underneath the hood if you want to serve clients. It's just a different time. I'm worried about the place that you live because SDRs are not being given what they need to have a successful career long term. Number one. I also don't think that the Silicon Valley ethos is very healthy, and everything is a technological solution. And
Mm-hmm.
not everything needs a technological solution. So you can record everybody's calls, you can get sequencers, you can do all these other things. But if your sales rep doesn't have the chops, if they don't have what you called a mini MBA, if they don't have the business acumen and they can't help guide that client, you're just whistling past the graveyard. Like there's nothing going to happen for you, because that's true. They need much greater value from a salesperson, and that's who they're going to buy from. Whoever gives them the best experience inside the sales conversation, which is really truly the only thing you ever have.
Well, what you mentioned, Anthony, just leads to this. There's this common sense revolution, I think, that's required in sales. It seems so simple when you explain it that way. It seems so simple and easy. But when we think of, whether it's a sales leader we're coaching, whether it's a CEO we're doing consulting for, they get caught up because there's so much noise in professional sales, and because it's not taught in every college and university the way it is at Capital with you, that everybody gets so confused by everything. And yes, there's lots of technology in the sales stack can help us find, top of funnel leads and opportunities and intent and all those kind of good things. But as you say, if the individual can't actually have a live conversation and show value in a reasonably short period of time, by the way, which is hard, then the buyer doesn't want to waste their time. And it continues, by the way. There's technology in some ways on the top end of the sales stack is just helping us do the wrong things way faster and with greater volume.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's polluting the universe for the rest of us.
And making it harder for us to connect with other people. I've never had anybody say, before we decide to buy from you, I need to know what's in your sales stack.
I know.
They don't care.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter. That isn't solving the problem. It's avoiding the problem, essentially. Like I'm going to give them tools. The tools are it's in here. So that's the part where we have to start doing a better job. And I think if you could just think about curiosity, like intellectual curiosity, I beg young people, like if you want to start getting your MBA, Just turn on CNBC in the morning
Mm,
and listen to CEOs talk about their business, and listen to uh, Joe Kernan and Becky Quick and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Listen to them talk to government officials and push them on what the impact of their decisions are on businesses. And you're going to start realizing there's a lot of stuff going on out there in the world that
yeah,
causes people to have a tough time making decisions and knowing what the right thing to do is. And when you're aware of all of those things, then it changes how you interact with your clients. You have to be the expert for them. And I know that a lot of people think, well, they know their business better than I do. Well, of course they do, but they don't know what's going on outside because their heads down, trying to do their work, trying to figure out how to get better results. And they need somebody to come in that's done that work for them. And eventually, if you are the one that continues to teach them and feed them all the things that they need to know, they become a dependent. They're like, I don't have to do this because I outsourced that to Mark. Mark's the
right.
one keeping me in charge of it. He's in charge of knowing what's going on out there. And whenever anything's going to happen, he calls me and says, listen, something's coming down the pike here. We need to start making some adjustments. And then you're going to have a lifetime client because you're the one that's doing the work for them. You're an outsourced person for them, not a salesperson. You're their trusted advisor, their consultant. Like, you need a different position on all of this. And telling them about your company is a total waste of their time. They have no interest.
I love this idea. Hey, check out CNBC every day. A couple of other thoughts I throw out there, team, for those listening. Make an investment in Harvard Business Review magazine. I'll be honest, they'll send you 4 or 5 magazines a year, and it's $130. Hey, there's no connection. But when you start to read about different businesses, the reality of it is the core business model is so simple. Whether it's Bank of America or whether it's in the funnel, the core business model is the same. You have a business, you have a product or service you want to sell to a certain specific target market, and you have a reason you believe you can compete and win in that market. And then you have a distribution model. That's it. So whether it's Bank America with the 5 lines of business and financial services, or in the funnel, or the sales accelerator, every business is the same, and their desired outcomes are all the same. We want to increase revenue. I want to reduce expense because that's going to lead to EBITDA or profit, and I have to reduce risk. So at the highest level, everything every business does just tries to do those 3 things. And once you start to understand that, and then you watch CNBC or read HBR, you stay current on these things. You read the first 8 pages of their 10K report, right? I know it's 120 pages long, but it's just financial spreadsheets. It's just P&L, statement of cash flows, and balance sheets. The first 8 pages, chairman's message, president message, spells out their business goals in 1-syllable words so that someone in grade 9 can understand it. So those chops around business acumen,
And,
best thing to take.
even more, if you just read their negative potential outcomes, so their risks, their risk assessment tells you what they're concerned about.
Yeah,
So
right.
the chairman's going to tell you, like, we're working on diversity, we're working on sustainability, we're working on these things. And then you get to the risk. Well,
Yeah.
if this happens, this is bad for us. Oh, okay. I did this exercise with a client where they were trying to get into PepsiCo, and I just pulled down their annual report, and I pulled out, I don't know, 20 quotes just to say, like, if can you help with this? Can you help with this? We can help with all those. Well, then why did you tell them that you're a big company and you can do this other thing for them? Like, you need
Right.
to, like, you go with the grain, like, what they want, help them get that done, and tell them you have a way to do this. Like, you're just starting in a very bad spot. And it's because we don't do enough work on your mini MBA. And a mini MBA, if you work in business, if you're a salesperson, you are a business person.
Yeah.
So you have to understand how business works, and you have to be interested in it. And if you're not interested in it, you're not going to do very well in sales. I found that I started in temporary staffing, and people would say, like, how do you know so much about these kind of businesses? It's like, well, I see all these different kinds of businesses. I
Yeah.
mean, I would work with giant retailers, manufacturing plants, food manufacturers. And so I know all these things because I walked in and I spent time with people on their floor talking to them about how to get better results. And so you'll find out like it's actually fun and you learn a lot of things and you become a more interesting person to other clients when you've had experience that you can share with them. And there's no reason to wait to try to get that experience. You need to go out and start getting it and then start organizing it so that you have a way to open up these conversations.
Anthony, when you went back to Ohio and started in staffing, I was selling photocopiers. And I had done the same thing. I wanted to be a professional musician and tried to live the life of doing both things at the same time, playing bar bands, playing originals. But it wasn't glamorous like the 90s hair band. When you were playing, what we did in the Toronto bar scene, it was borderline miserable. and nobody wants to hear originals. They want to hear covers. But when I was walking into companies, I spent this period of time at the beginning, and there was wonderful training, by the way, back then with those companies, wonderful sales training, but it was the second version. With
Right.
solution, I'm the same age. So with solution sales training, feeds and speeds and, features and benefits and leading, every question led down to, hey, I can solve it.
Right.
So it was still about me. And I remember one of the things that I liked least about it was walking into these businesses at the beginning and literally going, geez, I wonder what these guys do. I was so clueless that, I was taking over an existing install base, but I was so clueless as an individual, just walking in going, man, I wonder what these people do. And then I had nothing in my toolbox because I didn't understand their business to talk about except me and my technology. And I'll tell you what, I just hated it.
Yeah.
And
Because it feels like you're not creating any value.
I wasn't creating any value. And, now when you look at it, the thing that I think about for salespeople today is this is so much fun. If I actually go at this and I don't have to spend hours researching companies. This is a muscle like anything else. Once you start doing this, you start to speed up how quickly you can do it and how good you can be at it. But I just want a conversation about the Iannarino organization and your goals and objectives for the next 12 months. And I've picked up that you've seen 2 or 3 opportunities come from these unique times because your whole marketplace became global overnight. No more in-person, it's all digital. When you start to talk about somebody else's business, it's interesting, it's fun, you're providing value, and we can feel better about our profession. And I think this is a big thing in professional sales that we're seeing, whether it's sales leaders, salespeople, SDRs. We need to enjoy what we do and be invigorated by what we do and be intellectually stimulated by what we do, and we'll be better at it. But it's more fun to take this approach.
In the late 1700s, when France sent Napoleon to take over the Italian army, he showed up there at 26 years old, a general. And he had a bunch of generals who were much older than him. And he walked into the room and he sat down with paper and a pen, and he started asking them all these questions, like grilling them with all these questions. And they were stunned that he would ask these questions of something that he should have known, but because he didn't have any experience, he didn't know. He gave these questions so fast and so rapid fire and took down all of this information so fast. The group of them got together and realized, like, this is a different kind of person. Like, he's trying to understand. And then he just went straight through Italy without ever losing a single battle and took over the whole thing. And it was the intellectual humility to say, there's still a lot of things for me to learn.
Yeah.
So a great general. He had personally led 60 battles, 53 he won, 7 he lost. And even at Waterloo, when Wellington was asked who's the greatest captain of all time, Wellington said, in this age or any other, Napoleon.
Wow.
And it's the intellectual humility to say, I don't know enough. Now, he was certainly confident, But as a salesperson, you need to say, like, I'm going to let my clients teach me the part where I'm one down. So if
Mm,
I'm one down, I need to get out of being one down as fast as I possibly can. And when I was 25, I would walk into Structure, part of the Limited. There was a guy named Dallas Mulder there. And I said, Dallas, I understand what the concept of throughput is, but it seems to me like it's mathematical for you and not a concept. And he said, come and sit in on our meeting, and I'll show you. And they talked about it, and I still didn't actually get it. And then he said, let me show you the spreadsheet. And what we're doing is, how much do we get out the back door? And how much did it cost us in labor? And I'm like, I got it. Okay, so I'm the labor part. Okay.
mm,
And then he gave me the spreadsheet. About 2 weeks later, I showed up at another retailer, and I said, can you tell me what your throughput numbers look like? And they're like, you know what throughput numbers are? And I'm like, yeah, I know what they're kind of. I only know about
yeah.
this much. Like, I didn't know that much, but I was immediately welcomed in as somebody who knows something about their business.
Yeah.
And I learned more and more. And I'm not afraid, and you should never be afraid to ask the questions that are going to get you the best information so that you can actually help people. But it really is a different time. And a lot of the stuff that you learned and that I learned, I mean, solution selling was great at its time.
Sure it was.
It's just not right for this time.
Completely agree. It's funny you talk about old school, new school, and a combination of both in some cases. One of the vertical markets we do a lot of work with is large manufacturing companies. And I'd say on paper, if we were looking at the most sophisticated sales organizations, people would not automatically migrate to a manufacturing organization. But I'll tell you, Anthony, when you work with those companies and you have these people who've been selling, windows, patio doors for 20, 25 years, and they sell through third-party distribution, you go in and talk to a sales rep there, and they know their clients' businesses as well, if not better, than they know their own. They know the financial models. They know how to help them drive revenue. They know what's important to them. They know the impact of a delay on an SLA. And the sophistication, and it's not, they're really, what they are is unconsciously crazy competent.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the Silicon Valley tech companies, and we work with all, but a lot of these, they think the sophistication's there because of the technology, but the salesperson doesn't really want the conversation with a client or prospect. They want a demo. Hey, the big win was we did a demo. Nobody cares about a demo except the technology people who can't say yes to our deal anyway.
Right.
The business person wants the 3 bullets that says exactly what do I get to it? What desired outcome is this investment in ERP, this investment in the SaaS technology? What's it going to do for me? If nothing else, by the way, team, from today's podcast, if you take only, something that triggers growth orientation, that says, hey, I'm going to go and pick up a resource. I'm going to learn. What other resources do you like, Anthony, both for business acumen and for selling outside of your awesome books?
Oh, I'm a big reader, so I want to read everything that I can, but I don't read as many sales books as I used to. I have a lot of friends who write books, and I
Right.
have to write a lot of forewords and things like that. So I read a lot of those books. I think anything that you pick up that helps you understand the world better is it's like the Ray Dalio book or the video that you recommended. If you go watch that, you're going to have an education in 20 minutes that I don't know that you could get any other way.
Yeah.
And just having an understanding of how things work is super useful. So I have I'm in a, you can't see it because I won't turn this, but there's maybe 1,000 books in this room with me.
I've
And
seen
there's,
that picture with you before. I've seen you in front of your bookcase. It's gorgeous.
yeah, and I've got another 1,000 downstairs. So
Wow.
um and that is me recognizing that I don't know enough. And what got you here won't get you there.
Right.
So you need to continually reach out and try to find new things that make sense. So why would I listen to Alan Watts? Well, first off, I like the Zen thing a lot. It's useful to me.
Mhm.
So I'm listening to that, and you run into a concept like one up, and that ends up becoming something that's super useful. But if you're not reading and you're not paying attention, then you're not going to run into those things. I think HBR is good. I think Wall Street Journal's good. I think CNBC is great. I think Economist is a good thing to look at. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I wouldn't look so much for anything specific. I think sometimes you should just be an omnivore. Like, be an omnivore. If it's interesting to you, pick it up, because you'll find some value in it. So don't limit what you're reading or what you're watching or what you're studying. If you're interested in it, do it, because it will give you something. It will always give you something, even if you don't recognize it right away.
Team, one of the things that I'd share is this idea of growth orientation. If you're one of those folks that I don't like to read or I don't do this, I like to say from experience, you can change that. And I think in my late 20s and early 30s, after having a little bit of success, I thought I kind of knew, how to be good at professional selling. And I think I thought about leadership and so on and so forth. And probably had a little bit of a fixed mindset there. Once something triggers learning, you just find it's just such a wonderful experience. Pick up something, learn, and you can trigger growth orientation. Hey, Anthony, first of all, I just want to call out, I can't believe our time's over here, but I'll say it's been such a pleasure meeting you. I've seen so much from you online, your podcast, which called The Arena. I've really enjoyed your books. Again, as I say, one of my 1,000 favorites. Probably I have one shelf with all of the sales books I keep going back to. I always like to revisit some things. Your book is on it, The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. I can't wait to read the next one, Elite Sales Strategies, A Guide to Being One Up, Creating Value and Becoming Truly Consultative. Folks, keep an eye open for that in April 2022. Anthony, how else do people get in contact with you if they want to engage you?
The best place to go is thesalesblog.com. And if you go /newsletter, that's a great place to start. Or LinkedIn is a wonderful place to connect. Both of those are great.
Fantastic. So Anthony, thanks again for being on the show. What a privilege chatting with you.
Thank you for having me.